Emily Miller from the Washington Times joins us. Emily, good evening.
Evening, yes, that's right. It's only good day for those of you who don't live in Washington, D.C.
I mean, this is like I said. On the one hand, look, as a resident of Virginia who really doesn't like to go into D.C. because of D.C.'s gun laws, yay. But on the other hand, like, how can you admit, okay, we've got real serious problems? Let's go ahead and address this for everybody but the people who actually live here.
It makes no sense. And so what happened today is the D.C. Council finally reacted, and they did in July, to the series of stories I did on the military who were thrown in jail in D.C. for really innocent things like legally transporting a gun through D.C. but stopping for a doctor's appointment at Walter Reed, which is the case of Lieutenant Kim,
Mm-hmm.
or forgetting about some rounds of ammunition in a bag and going to the VFW and being thrown in jail, and that's the case of Adam Meckler. So the city council chairman, Phil Mendelson, in July finally introduced a bill in which he would make it no longer a criminal offense for non-residents who get caught up in these like ridiculous gun registration, ammo registration laws that exist in D.C. because D.C. is the only place, except for Chicago, where you have to register every single solitary gun that you own, and the only place except for Chicago and New York where you have to have a registered gun in order to possess ammunition. So the rules here, the laws here, are so crazy that of course the tourists can't know what's going on. And a million
Right.
people come to visit their nation's capital because it only exists in these three weird cities, and so people in the military whose job it is to carry guns and ammunition are being thrown in jail for this stuff. So those stories did shame them a little bit in D.C., but, their major issue is always, they want to get more autonomy from Congress, and they know they're not going to until they stop, getting themselves in so much trouble. And the
Right.
Senate was all over them for what they've been doing with these military. So today we had a first hearing to talk on this bill, and so what it would do is if you are a tourist or military, anyone visiting D.C. and you don't live here, and you forget that you have your gun, in your car, there's no other offense, you're not trying to rob a bank or shoot anyone, or you forget that you have a box of ammunition in your car, which is another case of someone today,
Yeah.
then you will get the district attorney, or the office of the attorney general of D.C. has the option to make it administrative, so you would pay a fine and not have a criminal record. Now, they could still prosecute you, and the problem in the hearing today was the attorney general's office opposed this bill, and so they didn't want this option. So whether it goes forward, who knows if they will ever use it. They could still continue to pursue what they've been doing, which is file criminal charges, and you have a permanent record, and you go to jail.
Yeah, and so all of that goes away for the people who are not residents of the district. Now, Emily? What will the punishment be now if you violate the district's gun laws and you're not a resident?
Well, the bill will probably be rewritten in the next period of time as it works its way through committee, and then it still has to pass the full council and get signed by the mayor. So we're a ways from seeing what the final bill is going to look like. Right now, the way it's written, you would get a fine, which has not been determined yet, and that's it. And you probably have to hire a lawyer, which is another huge problem for people, legal costs. But you wouldn't have a criminal record. That would be one option. For people who are ridiculously innocent, and this is just a big mistake. Everybody else, if you live in D.C. and you're convicted of the exact same crime with the exact same mistakes, you will have penalties up to a year in jail and a $1,000 fine. So there was a
Wow.
lot of questioning, not a lot, but there was enough questioning today about the constitutionality of charging one citizen of a state, like say you did this thing, you came through D.C. with a box of ammunition,
Yeah.
you would get a fine, I would get a year in jail. So I don't see how. The lawyers who testified all said we have a problem with this kind of contradicts the Article 4 of the Constitution. So we'll see how that turns out. But if the city council chairman proposes this bill, it's most likely it's going to pass and it's going to become law. The question is how long will it stay out in court? And so Dick Heller testified today, and of course he famously overcame the city's 30-year gun ban.
Yeah.
And he called this a micro step in getting freedom for gun rights in D.C. And we know really what has to be done has to end the ridiculous registration requirements and get any kind of carry laws in the city. So, Dick has been part of this, for 15 years, I think now, this
right.
push, looked at this as just sort of, as he calls it, a micro step in the right direction.
Well, it is a micro step, and I mean that's the thing. As you say, this is likely going to go back to court. I think it'll be an interesting legal theory to argue that you should punish residents more severely for violating the same law than non-residents. And who knows? Maybe a judge will find that law is fine and dandy. But what I suspect, what I hope will happen, is that ultimately the city is going to realize that the residents of the District of Columbia have the same constitutional rights as every other American. And it is just time that they quit playing games with these fundamental rights.
It's remarkable. And, the more I look at other state laws, I've been writing about D.C. gun laws for a year now, but the more I look at other state laws is how it becomes to me because it's all I know, it's what I know is with D.C.,
right.
is how extreme this is. Because, like I said, it's the only one with these where you have to register every single gun with the government, and the only other place in the country is Chicago. And then the only other place in Chicago is Chicago with the ammunition, and then the no carry laws at all. I mean, even... I think, does Illinois have any carry laws?
No, ma'am.
You can hunt, I think, right?
Yeah, that's it. Illinois is
you
the
can
only
hunt,
state.
though. I mean, you can
you
take a gun
hunt
out of your house at some point in your lifetime. And in D.C. doesn't even have that. So, and that, again, the only places in the country that have no open or concealed carry. So every time you go through the country's laws, you find that D.C. is the only one. And D.C. is the nation's capital. And it's just a matter of time, I believe, until another part of someone brings a concealed carry, or any kind of carry lawsuit gets to the Supreme Court and they overturn this ban because they didn't even discuss it in the Heller decision. The carry laws were not discussed at all. And you saw Antonin Scalia mention this a few months ago, that he does think the Supreme Court in the upcoming years will be looking at the carry laws and as it's really swept the nation, but a couple strong places don't have them. And so, I think obviously we all know that whoever's the next president in the next 4 years has a big decision will affect gun rights because of the Supreme Court.
Well, no, I mean that's exactly right. We've said on this program, I don't know how many times, that it's not just a matter of the next 4 years; it's a matter of the next 40 years. It will likely be decided in a lot of ways, by this election in November.
That's right, and it just D.C. is just a little kind of microcosm of the country, and because Congress ultimately has control of D.C., you can see how even little control they have over what's going on in the city as far as the Second Amendment, and it's the Supreme Court. It's the only place that really can make a difference, and so it's the courts that these things will be decided. So in the meantime, I'm really happy that. It breaks my heart when I talk or interview members of our military, all of whom have served in Iraq and Afghanistan, have been injured, and spend a night in jail in D.C. for gun laws. I mean, it's just, or feel horrible about themselves for having a record, which they all still do, of criminal records.
Right.
It just is so upsetting. And, it's upsetting when it happens to anyone, and I've heard a lot of stories of this happening to people, but especially at the military. So if this law, as Dick Heller correctly said, it is a micro step in the right direction, but just for a matter of, human decency, I think it's really important.
Absolutely. Hey, listen, Emily, thank you so much for coming on the program. It's so good talking to you tonight.
You too. Thank you. Have a good night.